Hello and welcome to the infamous Wargames 2.0 update. This is the 10-year anniversary of Wargames. I am the creator and developer of Wargames, Ace Bloke, better known as Mike, and today I'm going to go through some of the updates that has been implemented into the new Wargames version. Now, it doesn't matter whether you've played any of the Wargames 2 betas, or if you've played Wargames originally, or if this is your first time. I'm going to go through some of the main features and new features, which also covers all the features in the game if you're a new player as well. So to introduce some of the features, we have much improvement in the interface for the host options and for the login options for when you're creating a new country. Much cleaner interface with an explanation of all the effects that all of your choices at the beginning of the game does. So you have your ideology, terrain, which was involved in the old version. The unit selection has now been expanded, so it used to cover Europe and Americas. That's mostly UK and US equipment. That has now changed. Now there's a separation between UK, US and a third option, Russia, and there is also some subscriber options as well for France, Italy and Germany. There will likely be a few extras as well. There'll probably be Japan and China and possibly some others in the future. Religion is also in the same features as there was in the last game. There is no unit features at the moment. Religion will be expanded on further in future updates. In terms of the gameplay, you may have noticed from the graphics that we've upgraded from 32 by 32 pixels, which was the standard right in the beginning in 2005. They've now been upgraded to 40 by 40 pixels, which gives us a bit more space to do the tanks, buildings and all that business. And you may notice as you're building some of the buildings, things like the farms, the forests, some of the other buildings as well, they merge as they're next to each other, so they sort of join together, and there's not just individual elements anymore, they group together. Another thing you might notice when you're building is that there is now sounds. There's an individual sound for each building. Some of the menu options also have some indication sounds to let you know whether you've selected something, whether it's failed to select something for whatever reason. And it's also the first sound that's in the game in after 10 years. One of the main features that's available in 2.0 is your option to resize the map, your building map where you put your buildings. You can either stretch this window out. You can select the option at the top, which will give you an option for a sizing based on how big you want it. There is also a docking feature. As you log into the game, you'll see that the map window is a separate window, and with the docking feature, it will integrate itself into the main window. And as that main window stretches bigger or smaller, it will also expand your area of building. In addition to that, you can also slide away the messages on the left-hand side, and you can have the entire screen filled with your building window if you choose to. Wargames 2.0 has some resource changes. For a start, ports now produce more food. Ports and farms are now separated, although the food is still a combined resource between the two different buildings. Certain terrain types will prefer grain from the farms, and some terrain types will prefer fish from the ports. So now there's a bit more leeway on what kind of buildings you're going to pick depending on which terrain type you pick. An additional feature of the ports now is that if you have a spare sea tile which is not used, then that doubles up any number of ports that you have. So if you have 5 ports and 5 spare spaces of water which is not being used, you get the effects of 10 ports. This is just to promote some more sea areas in your country, and we'll also have some other features later on. Some other resource changes is that there is a new resource called coal. Now, coal and uranium is now considered subproducts of some of the other buildings. So from coal, you will get coal from forests and also from mines in the future. This is used mainly to power your power stations and will also be used in the future for certain units that are reliant on coal power. Uranium has also been changed. You can now get it as a subproduct of mines, but you still need the enrichment building from the original version. And what this does is it converts your unenriched uranium into either low enriched uranium, which is for nuclear power plants, or for highly enriched uranium, which is for nuclear weapons. So now there's a reason to have more forests, more mines, and you're now reliant on those for those two products, the coal and the uranium. There's also been some tech changes in the game. Originally, you'd have to research a certain amount of research, and then you can advance to the next level. From now, although the number of research you do does influence the speed at which you advance, the tech advancement now flows with each turn. So you may start off with low tech, you may log out, and then the next day you may log back in, and you may find that you've got new features, new buildings, new units. And this is a result of a flowing tech advancement, which is not reliant on you researching. Researching does help, and I would recommend in a long game that you research as much as possible, and this will speed up your tech advancement. One of the new changes in Wargames 2.0 is the replacement of the ministries, which was your basic windows for information, and this has now been switched to a different name, departments. Departments is found in the information tab and will load up very much like the ministries did. Now in its own window, you have different departments giving you different features and a lot more options and a lot more explanation about what things are going on. So just to go quickly through the departments that is currently in the game, Seat of Government was your standard window that you started with in the original game. It had some very basic information. Now Seat of Government has revolution commands instead of being in a separate section for the research in the previous game. You can change ideology and your head of state, which influences your ideologies. Obviously your ideologies affect some pros and cons. You can change your national motto from here, and also gives you your name of your country. The next section is the finance department. This gives you a cash breakdown of different revenues of income. So you have your cash from your towns, you have cash from your markets that upgrade your towns, you have potentially cash coming in from your factories, you have cash coming in from trade, and some other features as well. Also part in the game is the million notes. Now the million notes was a original Wargames feature of getting past the very high number issues that you get. So once you get to about 2 billion in the game, then there was issues with the way that the game handled high value numbers. So in the old game there was a feature called million notes, and this is still here. So for certain research, certain items, certain nuclear weapons, for example, this may need million notes, and that means converting your what I call your petty cash into million notes, and you can get your million note conversion from the finance department. In future this may be removed, and if possible I would like to make it back into one value, so you don't have to worry about that. But for the moment million notes continues. So if you were wondering why you can't buy something even though it looks like you've got the money, it may be million notes. So click on the finance department, click on the million note conversion, convert your money into your million notes, and we'll be able to purchase those things. The next department is the manufacturing department. This gives you a breakdown of your resource creation that includes your food, wood, coal, metal, oil, uranium, and also explains where they come from, which buildings influences it, and also roughly what your outgoings are. Now this still needs to be perfected a little bit, so it may be off from the resources that you're actually getting, but by and large it will give you a rough estimate of where your resources are going out from, how much you're gaining, and what your net gain is. The energy department gives you a breakdown of your power resources and how much of each building produces. This obviously lets you know how much you're getting from government buildings, how much you're getting from power plants, nuclear power plants, and the steam plants as well. There'll be also some more buildings coming in later in the game, so obviously this will influence things later on. The energy department also has your uranium breakdown. This is explained in the 3 different types as I explained earlier. You have your unenriched, which comes directly from your mines. You have your low enriched, which is for your power plants, and your high enriched for your nuclear weapons. The slider underneath this defines how much of your enrichment buildings enriches the unenriched uranium into the different sections for power plants and weapons. You can slide this across from the left to the right. The left hand side is your low enrichment for power plants. On the right hand side is your weapon enrichment. If you do it in the middle, it will split between the two. Bear in mind though that highly enriched uranium requires more unenriched uranium to begin with, and also takes longer to produce. So it is easier to get the low enriched, but once it's been enriched to low standard, then it will not be able to go any higher. So make sure you use the slider correctly and use it for which feature you need to use it for. The business department includes job data and how much factories produce. One of the features in the original game is the ability to use your factories for either war economy, so to produce soldiers, tanks, aircraft, nuclear weapons, etc., and also for a civic use, which is the use of factories to produce goods inside the country to produce money. Now you can use this slider to, again, like the enrichment slider, switch between the left hand side, which is civic for cash incentives, and the right hand side to use as war production. Bear in mind that when you're using it for civic production, it uses metal. Revenue and Customs department includes trade options, and these covers a few new features. You have passive trading and automatic trading. Automatic trading covers resource shortages when you are facing any dangers such as starvation. This may be a result of poor management, or it could be a result of being attacked and you may be offline, you may be online. But what automatic trading does, or when you have a set minimum level that you want to have of the resource and how much you're willing to pay for it, when you've gone under that minimum level, it will look onto the open market, see if there's any available resources to purchase, and it will purchase it automatically. Passive trading is also another feature which uses resources that you've collected and sells them for a small increase in cash. This is probably not as worthwhile as selling to other players, but regardless of whether you have any players or not, you can use passive resource trading to gain some more income. Bear in mind that all trading requires ports. When you build ports, they automatically produce ships. Upgrading ships increases the tonnage, so you can trade more. Ports are required to trade all resources, including within alliances. The statistics department includes data from the old versions which don't fit anywhere else. There will probably be some changeover and some differences in this in future versions. The infrastructure department gives a breakdown of your buildings and actually labels them with what they are, so you can find out how many towns you have, how many forests you have. The research and development department will give you upgrades for your resources. This used to be in a separate section next to your units and buildings in the old version. Now it's within the department tab, and you can find out what time periods you can research different research at, and also gives you a grayed out option when they've been researched, so you know how far you've got. The war department gives you the breakdown of your available pool of men, which can be converted to soldiers, which is probably something that people didn't understand in the old version, so it's now labelled and you can see the sort of the level of which you can hire people. It also gives you the space of how much your barracks is providing to convert those into soldiers. You've got your attack and defence scores, and also your countdowns for when your weapon of mass destruction can be used. At the bottom, there's also an available list to see what soldiers you have and how many they are. You can always disband any soldiers you have within the unit menu. The Foreign Affairs department gives you your alliance options. This should now cover all of the same options that you used to have in the old game. So you have your creation of alliance, you have your alliance resource bank, which is now in a handy new format where you select the resource, input your amount that you want to take or give to the alliance, and then different buttons for exporting to the alliance and importing from the alliance. The alliance report section can be used for giving out information within the alliance. Permissions and the leader options is in a separate tab and gives the ability for leaders to change what ranks can do which features, such as invite to alliance, to edit the reports, and also to boot out the alliance. Like the old version of the game, there is 4 levels, including the leadership rank, which can only change through the transfer leadership button. A leader can promote or demote people in the alliance to different ranks and also change the alliance colour. Units is a major change in 2.0. Instead of the tech advances, which is no longer in the game, your selection at the beginning of the game for UK, US, Russia, or some of the subscriber features now gives you a different range of different units and different graphics for depending on which unit selection you have made at the beginning of the game. Also in the game now is the form of upgrading your old options, which replaces different ones which are now pointless or just defunct because there are better versions of it. So you have one standard infantry unit, for example, and this upgrades with time. On the unit menu, you'll see a green triangle if there's an available upgrade. Unit advances requires one of the new buildings called the Academy, which is in the military buildings menu, and this serves the purpose of the research center but for war unit research. You can research something from the research and development tab and from the unit menu at the same time, so they are 2 separate things. You can upgrade one of each at the same time. Weapon of mass destruction now comes in different parts and require the right parts to use, so they are split between the explosives used, the casing, and the propulsion. All of these do different effects, and as the game is expanded further, you'll see the differences in those 3 features and how that comes about. As in the old version, the bulk buy and disband options are still available in the units menu. Now always remember, when you're trying to buy nuclear weapons, the bulk buy still applies to that, so If you're wondering why you can't afford your nuclear weapons, there's a good chance that you've set bulk buy on 1,000 and you're trying to buy 1,000 explosives and it's not working. In the information tab, you'll get the same information that you used to have in the old version. You have the statistical information, now in the form of tables in a separate window. You have your alliance pie chart and list and your religion pie chart and list, all features that used to be in the original game, and also the leading players tab. Spying is as available as before, but there is a new feature called Spy on Department, which allows you to sneakily check on other players' stats. You can select somebody and it will open up the department menu just as it would be for yourself, except you're looking at the way that they would see it. So you can check to see how effective your attacking is, you can see how strong their defenses are, you can see how good their economy is, but you can't change anything. You might be able to click things, but you won't be changing their features. Although the buttons will still be available there, you won't be changing any of the features of their country while you are available in their department screen. The other major change in 2.0 is the battle system. Now, in the original game, there was a number crunching exercise, which it still is, but there's now new variables to promote the use of the graphical representation of battles that is now in the new version of the game. Alongside all the old variables that was involved in the battle system in the previous version, you now have range and speed. So tanks will naturally be faster than infantry and will likely to attack first. The range also affects their ability to fire from a distance, and the further they can fire from a distance, the more likely they are to survive an attack from your enemy as well. If your infantry, for example, has a lower range than your tanks, which they most likely will, then there's a chance that your infantry will bypass your tanks and become the cannon fodder for when they get attacked. Some of the other features that I'm hoping to implement in the 2.0 update and the versions to come includes, for the very first time, an AI form of nations which will produce building and build armies just as any other player would. This is working in the game now. There is a couple of other features that I need to do to finish this feature off, but they will build buildings, they will develop armies, they will compensate for problems they have in their countries. They still need an attack parameter in order to take land and attack the right people without being harsh against new people or people who are suffering and need time to redevelop. There's that needs to be done, and also research needs to be done as well. But all other features, including the ability to produce resources, to cover expenses, to stop shortages, are all in the game. One of the other features is you might find that you used to be able to spy on the moon. This was important for space advancement in the original game. That was still locked out of 2.0 and will come at a future date, but you can see already the next feature to appear in Wargames, which is the Mars map, and this includes the 2 moons, which will also have a special feature in 2 of the corners of the Mars map. Alternative systems to come as well is also the ship combat and air raids, and this is going to be on different formats to the traditional battle system that you're used to. So what you see now in the graphical battles is a different form than you'll find in the ship and the air combat. That is still to come. That covers all of the new features and basic features of the game, regardless of whether you are coming for the first time or returning from this very long break. I hope you've enjoyed listening to this, and I hope this has been of some use, and hopefully we'll see some more updates coming soon.